Hello, today I'm going to be doing a speech to inform you about the North Carolina vote laws and how it would affect our fellow North Carolinians. The new voter legislation will change the political system in the state of North Carolina by eliminating those who need to be involved in the decision-making process. The choices of the state will impact our most vulnerable citizens and they need for their voices to be heard. The new laws implemented by Republican lawmakers will impact the young, the old, minorities, and the poor, which will disenfranchise a target group of people in the process of the political system by not allowing them to exercise their rights as a citizen. North Carolina has been the most progressive in the South among the other southern states by being a leader in the areas of industrial development, education, and race relations. The new legislation has been challenged by the Justice Department because of the provisions of the law requiring citizens to have a voter ID, shortening early voting for 10 days instead of 17 days, and restricting the provisional ballot. The basis of the legislation is that President Obama was asked to show ID at the previous election at his poll. So Governor Pat McCrory believed in its provision for all citizens to be required to show ID. The state was hardest hit due to the recession in 2008, and it is a hardship for citizens to be required to purchase an ID when they may have to choose between their legal right to vote or between food and shelter. Governor McCrory has stated that identification will be free for those who need identification. However, that is a provision that we place further into the future. The economy of North Carolina has moved into recovery, but many fellow citizens have fallen through the cracks due to the lack of education, training, and opportunities. The future of North Carolina is not to alienate a group of citizens, but provide them with means to be productive and have a voice in the political system. After the 2012 re-election process, the Republican Party began to dismantle the current districts in assigning some Democratic representatives to areas where the Republican Party has its deepest roots. The strategy was to suppress the vote among students, minorities, poor, and elderly, who normally would be candidates for the Democratic Party. Early voting among those demographics would reap a large percentage for the opposing party. The consensus is students, minorities, poor, elderly tend to vote Democratic instead of the Republicans. The legislation is to prevent fraud at the polls, but this only weakens the system instead of protecting it. The recent elections did prove there was a flaw in the system, but the ones who exploited the flaw was not a Democrat, but documented incidents were more Republicans who benefited from the dishonesty. The recount in the investigation found no discrepancies among questionable states, especially in North Carolina. The law is clearly denounced by civil rights advocates who believe McCrory and his fellow advocates for the Republicans are for them to monopolize the future elections by requirements of voting, by changing the requirements of voting and redistricting the counties. Even though the strategy is not yet clear in their intent to dominate official elections, but it does focus on a certain demographics and send a strong message in NC constituents by ignoring the rights of the citizens and to promote their own agenda, speaking volumes to those who do not have the means, the power, or the opportunities of their counterparts. It should be based on the legitimacy of the democratic process to hear the people, not the purse of special interest groups or someone trying to secure a position in the government, which has been the case in the recent elections. The controversy of the legislation has stirred a civil rights leader in the community to push for Moral Mondays by the NAACP, which is headed by Reverend William Barber II. The campaign promises of the new governor and state representatives are not focusing on jobs and economic growth, pushing an agenda in which the very people electing them into office now trying to bar them from being a part of the political process. The Republican Party of governors are already preparing to take the White House in 2016 by now offering up themselves and their can-do records. However, this is not the focus that legislation of this magnitude should focus on, the approach to get more power. McCrory stated the policy restriction would impact them. However, the average Republican is white, well-educated, and is well above middle-class America. which is above 6 figures, salaries or more. North Carolina constituents should continue the outcry of injustice because this legislation is attacking our legal rights to vote regardless of socioeconomic status and education. The basis of the ideology of the opposing party, the Democrats, are uneducated, lack the knowledge to choose the value of the candidacy in the political process. The citizens are well able to choose their candidates for public office, and not everyone is looking for the government to hand them money, but allowing them with opportunities to make a reasonable, livable earnings. And in this section, I'm going to do a Q&A. I'm going to do questions and answers.
What is the impact of the voters' legislation?
The voters' legislation is going to affect those who are poor, minorities, elderly. They're not going to be able to get the identification required because they're not able to afford it.
And what are the changes with that legislation? What are those changes that is going to make a big difference in the last voter laws to the new ones this time?
Okay, well, now they're requiring that everyone have voter identification, and that they're going to cut the early ballot time that you can come in and can't. It has to be you have to do it within 10 days instead of 14. So they're going to change the early ballot. They're not going to allow you to put your ballot in early as they used to be.
So who did this affect the most? What group?
It will affect the poor, minorities, the elderly. These are the people that normally vote for the Democrats, and this change in the North Carolina voter laws will affect those group of people.